Good evening, everyone. If you are here and are in the Haas-Stallings workshop, would you please raise your hand? Some folks are going to bring you a handout that tells you which poems you're going to cover in workshop tomorrow. Just keep it up till you have a piece of paper in your hand. I haven't mentioned anything about the photographs on the wall yet. All of the portraits hanging around the side and back are visitors and faculty members who have been here throughout our 27 years. All were taken by our resident photographer, Miriam Berkeley. Who also took the pictures on the side walls. The pictures on the walls behind me were taken by Preston Merchant, who was on the first staff of the Writers' Conference. Not only are we lucky enough to be able to have these pictures hanging around us, we also have both photographers present. Preston is in the back, and Miriam is right here up front. They're happy to sell you prints for very reasonable prices, so please track them down. We will have our second translation workshop at noon in the inn tomorrow. Even if you didn't go today, feel free to go tomorrow if you would like. And also, please respect the quiet as you're going in and out of the inn to lunch. Let's try to walk through the lobby quietly. We'll also have another run to Monteagle tomorrow if you need any items from stores available in Monteagle, which is not that many, but they got toothpaste. That'll leave at 1:45, immediately following lunch from the front of the inn. Tomorrow is a great morning. We will have our first staff reading. 9 a.m., I promise it is worth setting your alarm. And that'll be followed by craft lectures from Richard Bausch and Naomi Azuka. So very much looking forward to those. Social chair time.
We've had terrific hikes and open mics, and we don't have a hike tomorrow, but we are reading. So lay off the magic tonight and come hear us read. The winner of Charles Martin's Signs and Wonders is Tyler Mills. And the winner of Sidney Wade's Straights and Narrows is Michael Mark.
Maybe not. Marky Mark.
How about Rebecca Hannigan? How about Maria Nazos? Please give it up for Sidney Wade.
Oh, thank you all for coming. Thank you, everybody, Wyatt and Barbara and Megan and Adam and my Adam, because, you know, he's a Gator, and his fabulous crew and fellow faculty who are so incredible. It's a true privilege to be here. We had our first workshop this morning, and I am just thrilled with the quality of the discourse and the talent of the people who are in the program, so thank you all for being here. I'm going to start with the inevitable. The second time George Bush was not legitimately elected, I was enraged, and I wrote many impassioned poems about, political poems. And so I thought they worked pretty well, and they were relevant for their time. And then Barack Obama was elected. And, in the first flush of that wonderful time, I thought, okay, well, political poems are, they're limited. They just belong to their time. They only resonate with their time. Well, the time has come again, and as Alicia says, it has always been, like this. So I think they resonate again, and I'm going to start with a few angry poems. And you can, you can transpose personages in this. So the first poem is called "No Comfort to Be Had," and it was written because, 2000 and whenever George Bush was second. And I just noticed, it may have taken me longer than others, that the body politic was so perfectly divided and could not communicate. And so one half, was celebrating, and the other half was absolutely, gobsmacked and couldn't move. Just like a patient who had had a stroke, a physical stroke. And there's a real similarity there. So this is the poem. No comfort to be had. After it happened, the blood pressure soared. Half the body wept, one hand on its brow, while one of its two legs began to march to the drum of that which had prevailed. One half of the brain, bewildered, racked itself in search of comfort, while the other, firmer half scoured the mall for a gown for the ball. The body, thus arrayed in perfect discord, one foot crammed in a party shoe, now began to stagger around the room, starched and wilted all at once. One eye, the pale one, stared at the clock ticking on the shelf, whose face concealed a belly full of worms. One hand nailed the orders to the wall. I write these sonnets. That was a sonnet, and it was perfectly rhymed. But I write the rhymes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so nobody hears them, and then I get mad when nobody hears them. This is not a sonnet. An organized crime spree of the highest order. This just in. Our apocalyptic nerve gas news analysis team reports the final dissolution of the squeamish party. The mercantile essence has reinvigorated the auction block and ratcheted up a free-for-all in our deeply pocketed hemi-demi heaven. Beyond the ever-efflorescent brass, an occasional lance gleams in the camps of the foolhardy who suspect necrosis of the ballot box is advanced. Yet the ship of state barges on in brilliant rays of tin largesse as we mine the metaphysics of the mall. The mall, not, not the mall. An utterly gross thing. As principal conjurer of false relief, he traffics in bluff and swagger, and sheds on occasion a single brass tear. The measure of larceny here is breathtakingly grand, built on blather beyond belief. Our body politic is out of joint, but Dr. Kmart will see us now, and once we've reached the federally designated turning point, we'll celebrate in gildered streets and golden groves with the election in the proverbial bag and random darkness fuming on the stove. Lost Words. This is a little prose poem occasioned by the language surrounding the Iraq War, basically about the hijacking of language by the enemy camp. You know, language in the mouths of villains has no relationship to the truth, of course. Lost Words. The first was fair in all her facets, lovely, pale, and just, a rope of rubies around her doomed and beautiful neck. It was very sad. Next to go was the sturdy and quarrelsome equality, which was a surprise as we'd known him all these years to be a scrapper. Very soon after that, truth and charity suicided themselves off a nearby cliff in despair, or possibly in sympathy with the others. These losses have been followed now by those of freedom and liberation, noble and leathery old soldiers who, in immaculate military dress, faced each other squarely and blew each other's brains out. They left a note, jointly composed and signed, saying they felt duty-bound to remove themselves from further abuse by the authorities. It appears, however, as though a couple of impostors stepped in immediately to take their places and have been circulating glibly ever since. Okay, that's the extent of my rage at the moment. I mean, it doesn't stop, but I'll stop. This next poem is called Deep Gossip. Has anybody heard that phrase before? This apparently is the late Liam Rector's definition of poetry. Okay, a tiny little poem. 1. Concerto grosso, blackest heart, a mystifying natal chart, all ignite the metaphoric art. 2. A planet full of pure desire is all a poet should require to set the commonplace afire. 3. The heart that hides inside the form observes the words that fume and swarm. No one lives above the storm. Okay. Speaking about form, I do like to write sometimes about poems, the process of poetry writing. And this poem is called Form. I spend most of my time either in Maine or in Florida, and the poems from this book are mostly Maine poems. I have a lovely home right on a lake, and it's gorgeous. Form. And now the lake's slate gray, the trees are green fringed, and deeper in the distance, the mountain hulks and presses its blue form, insistent on the eye, absolutely everything at stake at every moment. Interlude. The never-ending meditation continues this early morning. Squirrels on the porch, and in the trees, the lake is still, the silence blue. I've belled the cat, made coffee, and am ready with my pencil to accept whatever mind imagines is its music or its body or its gold. I've hung the Niger thistle seed and am waiting for the cloud of goldfinches I hear is near to appear. They don't do this so often anymore, but you often were asked to check off your religion on, some bureaucratic form. And I always wrote in animist. I'm an animist. Animist Manifesto. Where is God, we ask in haste, and answer slow, in winter-paced adagio, in appetite, in thrum and fissure, in pressure in the deep-set vein, in silence and in marbled sleep, in the garbled dream of working men with far-flung shoulders, in the steady hum of axled tires, in their endless turning and the slow burn of their prose, in the autumn poetry of fire, in the mordant tones of blazery, in fall-stroked polyphonic meadows, in the darkness of the Dorian scale, the shadowed face and tangled dance that trails all music and its fragrance, in the winding sonitude of grief that punctures every day's veneer, in all bodies bound by gravity, in the splendor of the soulfish floating in their water holes, waiting patiently for amplitude, for metaphor, for the song of mind made flesh. In this lovely home in the middle of the woods, way at the end of a long, long dirt road, I live mostly by myself, but I have 3 cats. This poem is mostly about being much alone. It's called Solitude. Solitude is silver as yesterday's weather. Below the low winter ceiling of clouds, the slant November sun skittered across the lake and into the house. In 2 weeks, tiny flakes will begin sifting out of the gray sky one by one. Open the door, let the cats in. Now, as I pin wet clothes to the line, idiotically happy in the crisp, clear air, a gray jay boldly alights 5 feet from me and politely asks to be fed. I tell him to wait right there, go into the house, open the door, let the cats out, and return with bread, which he eats from my hand, as I fret about lurking cats, quite certain I shouldn't encourage this sort of perilous behavior. Open the door, let the cats in. It isn't lonely with cats and birds and a fire in the fireplace, and on a good day, laundry to hang. Open the door, let the cats out. Poems to write, poets to read, like Lew Welch as he thanks his woodpile and thinks he's turning shack simple like Han Shan and Wittgenstein and possibly me. Open the door, let the cats in. Solitude flows in narrow, pressured straits, as in the Bosphorus, whose green currents are layered and profound and run counter to each other, so that if a fisherman casts his net deep enough, the lower current will tow his boat upstream. Open the door, let the cats out. A minute ago, I heard a gunshot and stepped outside to listen. All I hear now is the slosh of small waves on the rocks and water dripping onto pebbles from the roof. Open the door, let the cats in. In bright slanted light and on windless days in utter silence, it becomes clear we all must descend one by one into winter. Open the door, let the cats out. Thank you. In our workshop this afternoon, one of our students confessed that he wanted to write a poem. Jonathan said he wanted to write a poem that in a single sentence that ran as long as he possibly could take it. And I have to confess that I had that same ambition for an entire book. I wanted to have a... I gave up after 6 pages, but this is the 6 pages. Yeah, it ends with an elegy to my very dear friend Hugh Ogden, who was a poet who died many years ago. Run on. Caveat emptor. We'll be running on together for a while, and I'll be carving up the spiritual possibilities in the background, and we might find from time to time a reprise of that old sublime and unhappy opera, The Roaring Desire for More, which is, after all, the dire wilderness we all tend to navigate with tender regard for our poor, poor hands. So here's the plan. I'll serve as the bravura conduit to intuition land, and you provide the filthy lucre, and we'll orchestrate a balanced dance, accompanied perhaps by some nuanced romantic fumbling, and maybe even some Christian death threats from the right side of the brain, which is the nurse douloureuse of macaronic verse. Oh, caro babino, now don't you feel better? Not really. That nurse is standing on her histrionic feet and yelling that a Wolfowitz in Schitt's clothing is marauding in our fold, a vast and uncurtailed misprision of vision. Oh la, le pauvre! He and his pals ace the tests of violence and shame every time they take them. Then they stash the crude oil under the bed. What a tired old cliche. They should be taking care of the waifs and the orphans. Instead, they congregate at the mouth of the Bible Factory outlet. I ask you, what is this great and golden world coming to? Or what is the chief effect of this pageant? As Mr. Stevens, very late of Hartford, asks, as did my great friend Hugh, more newly late of Hartford, gone on New Year's Eve. He strapped on skis and glided over the thinnest, merest whisper of new ice, which failed him. Then immobilizing cold gathered him slow in its heavy arms. And now, on this, the brighter side of the divide, we're poorer by one vivid, loving, slight and wiry, barefoot man, bandanaed, wild-haired, fond of smoke and poems. And I wonder how the lanyard of history will tether this single glazing loss to the catalog of misery it so surely is compiling in its always forthcoming great long poem. And I'm pretty sure I read this last year at Sewanee, so forgive me, those of you who have heard it before. But I like this poem. It's about a it's about a geep. Who here knows what a geep is? Oh, okay. So a geep is a medically engineered creature. They put the nucleus of a sheep inside the ovum of a goat. Remember? Okay. It's, it doesn't happen naturally. And the only other thing, other thing I have to say about this poem is that those of you who know Frost or anything about Frost will recognize the wholesale theft at the end of this poem. Okay, Geep. The music of the sleepy day was ravagingly dull until Michael, my office mate, Michael Hoffman, wonderful man. Until Michael reeled up a geep from the depths of his considerable intelligence. A geep, a wonky blend of goat and sheep, a medical medley, genetic fugue they call chimera, another wholly enthralling sound we found when Googling geep, whose enharmonic bleating in the end rings oh so sad. The photo on the screen reveals a downcast baby creature, neither here nor there, two bold and mordant sets of chromosomes whistling fortissimo through its patchwork hide, a botched-up map of silken hair and woolly yellow fur, its forlorn, droopy ears a study in radical embarrassment. I feel profoundly sorry for this border folly, this lonely little instrument of the ever-expanding notion of what's possible. But then I see we're kin, the little geep and me. We're marginal ephemera, intoning low, invisible messages at the edges of the known to who knows whom, the difference between us a matter of degree. The poet, of course, a hybrid creature of transport and remorse, an overreacher in semaphore who knows that sound's the gold in the ore, whose pleasure ground is linguistic welter that rides like ice on its own melting to paradise or to a stranger land we don't yet understand. Okay, I've been, 4 years ago, I magically turned into a birder. And I've been writing poems about birds ever since. And I finally have a book of poems that's going to be published in the next year or so by this lovely little independent press based in Portland, Oregon, called Atelier 26. I wanted my regular publisher, Persia, to do it, but they couldn't do it because what I wanted was an ebook component. So every poem in the book is about a bird, and I want the people who read it to be able to click on images of the birds, recordings of their sounds, range maps, which are readily available on the internet. And it just took a young man, or a young person with a young press to do this, and so hopefully it'll all work out. When I started putting my poems together about birds, I was kind of astonished that even though I hadn't really focused on birds before, I'd written many poems about birds in my life before I turned into this other kind of a creature. This is one of them. It's called Snowy Owl, from my first book. A woman who looked like a snowy owl knocked on my door last winter. A bunch of artificial violets was pinned to her gray woolen coat. She trudged through the snow in high heels sheathed in opaque plastic boots. Her smile was bright as a blast furnace, and her eyes, behind double-thick glasses, brimmed over with inspiration. "Do you," she began, "ever think about living forever?" "Sometimes," I replied, staring into her yellow eyes. She then reached in her purse and pulled out a mouse that swung from her gnarled and horny fingertips, dead. The gift of eternal life is not for mice. It is for us who know the beauty of death, the light in the blood as it falls to earth, who know, too, the good liquor of loss, blue terror in the fall from a great height, who know cruelty can be beautiful and love a poor relation in this fine world full of contradiction. After this, she smiled more brightly than ever, and with great gentleness and pride restored the dead mouse to her purse. "Do you have any questions?" she inquired. I thought for a moment and said, "Yes. Are you partial to a gamey cassoulet? Perhaps I could persuade you to step in for dinner." She puffed out her chest and glared. The violets shivered. She then wheeled on a sharp heel and flew away. The truth about cats. They kill birds. As I wish my white cat a happy new year, I see that although she heard and flicked an ear, she cares not a whit for the temposphere, that her map of time includes simply here, now, the rhyme of the cat food can snapping and the meat in her mouth. When her eyes are fixed on a bird, her irises dilate so wide it seems the creature might fly right inside if it decided to blow out its own little temporal light in a flight of featherweight suicide. First Green Flare. This is a spring poem, very early spring poem. You know, when that first delicate green shades the trees. First green flare makes the air quiver and dart, the throat ache to call, makes the heart cheer, the ear keen to the sheer glorious windfall of aureole, viri, vireo. One of my friends who started birding about the same time I did, which was not long ago, confessed to me that there is a bird called the white-eyed vireo, and it's very common in the southeastern United States, probably many other places. But he always heard the wide-eyed vireo, and so I thought I'd write a poem for him about his little bird. The wide-eyed vireo resembles the white-eyed vireo in many in many characteristics. The wide-eyed vireo is grisly in hue. His legs are blue. He fizzes in witch hazel and dizzy thickets of willow. A secretive and shrubby dude, he mimics the tunes of other birds, though he often repeats his own singular words. He feasts on littler beasts he finds with his yellow-spectacled, wide-open eyes, which he also keeps peeled. He's an avian masher, for a chance encounter with the double-breasted mattress thrasher. Okay, I don't know. I don't know how this poem found its way in, but I think I'm going to read it. I've heard lots of people complain about allergies to pollen, and we have pollen just in spades in Gainesville in the spring. If you've ever suffered from pollen, this poem is for you. Pollen. Every spring, pollen falls on cars, on railings. It pools and sheets the pavement after rain, gold and green. It blankets the town. Such power. Each grain, a small sun, sacred dust, tree semen, powdered lust, stuffs the nose and makes it run. A bird is a word abroad in air, on a stem with roots, a gem in scarlet, lemon, brown, the fruit of import from above, a weather report, in short, a noun, a kind of requiem for all that passes, love, wind, grasses. Blue. The great blue song of the earth is sung in all the best venues, treetop, marsh, desert, shore. And on this spring day in the wetlands where, under a late sun, we stand alone and in love with each other and the passing day, we watch a cormorant whose eye is ringed in blue diamonds, a shimmering lure, and we love this blue and this dark bird and this deepening sky that pinks and hums in the west. And then the bird opens his beak and flutters his throat, and the late afternoon light illuminates the inside tissue of his mouth, which is as blue as his ocular jewelry, as blue as the bluest ocean, as blue as the sky in all its depth, as blue as the back of the small and determined beetle who struggles to roll his enormous dung ball in his own breeding bid to enchant another small blue miracle. And I'm going to finish up with a few poems from Turkey. Oh, poor Turkey, I don't know if you're following the news. It's just hideous, as bad as it's ever been. I lived in Turkey for 2 years, not consecutively. I'm not perfectly fluent I'm semi-fluent in Turkish, but I've been translating some poetry from the Turkish because nobody else can. And they're wonderful poets, and they deserve more exposure to the world. In fact, Nigel asked me to read this. It's called Night. This is the translation of a poem called Gece by the great Turkish poet Yahya Kemal. Kandili is the name of a small town on the Bosphorus. Night. While Kandili floated in clouds of sleep, we pulled the full moon through the unruffled deep. The path through the water was a shimmering burn. We went and never spoke of return. Dreaming slopes and phantom trees, hillsides in water taking their ease. The season's nearing end was strewn with the notes of an old and distant tune. We lost ourselves in that long, far drift until it put us ashore in the dawn and left. One of my good friends in Istanbul had an apartment whose terrace had the most beautiful view, I think, in all of the world. It overlooked the Bosphorus. The Bosphorus is the strait that separates Europe from Asia, and it's a fascinating strait, incredibly turbulent, and mysterious and beautiful. So you could see almost to the Black Sea at the north. You could see the Sea of Marmara to the south. You could see the Golden Horn, which in those days, in the 1980s, was hideously polluted. So there's a lot of description of black and sludge here. It's cleaned up since then, but we would just sit up there on the terrace and marvel. I felt I was truly at the center of the world, at the absolute omphalos, the belly button of the world, because this is the center of the world. Drinking wine on a hill above the confluence of the Bosphorus and the Golden Horn. High above the congregation of the laminated waters, muscular and clear, that deeply and to great effect reverse themselves in diurnal layered turnings, that lap between the Marmara, a heaving marble sea, and the glassy Euxine, twice a day at least. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to explain. The Euxine is the old-fashioned term for the Black Sea. And another little aside, how many of you have read Don Juan? An incredible read, just a fabulous, incredible epic, very funny Lord Byron. At one point, his hero travels across the Euxine in very bad weather. And what do you suppose he rhymes with Euxine? Puxin. Anyway. Okay. Okay, that lap between the Marmara, a heaving marble sea, and the glassy Euxine twice a day at least. The cow ford, Io's refuge from the torment of the fly. This was the Bosphorus. The Bosphorus, the blue veneer that with one key opens and closes two worlds, two seas. And the black and stinking Golden Horn, where sludge flourishes in sun, where black enamels all the piers and boats and anchor ropes, where potent Ottoman fleets once harbored Chrysokeras, O gilded name, where subterfuge bubbled up in darkness more than once to author the splendid fall of fabled empire. Up here at night, one scans the expanse of civil lights to try to see what lies beneath the sheets, the film, the fine and stratified detritus of significant events, to refine the figures, exfoliate the press of things, to clarify the confluence of vessel and vexation as the ferries skim the surfaces, as drops slit down the glass. Bronze dogs. Istiklal, I mentioned here. This is the shopping street, very popular shopping street in the middle of Istanbul. Off Istiklal and up a winding street, a dealer in antiques displays a pair of dogs, enormous, placid, seated, bronze. They frame the door, which opens on a store of artifice, of calm device to cheat the past, which never dies. An étagère reveals a wheel from Egypt, also bronze, which purifies the soul, and a golden score of vessels for the dying generations. The dogs are blind and beautiful. A violet moment hovers overhead. The evening shadows fill with figured intimations. O talismans, elusive amulets, protect us from the dreadful closing in. I hesitate to read this next one, but I'm going to. The reason I hesitate is because it's a villanelle, and I have a hell of a time trying to write a villanelle. And after Charles's miraculous renderings, his incredible skill, but I'm going to do it, so wish me luck. Civilization and its discontents. I stood once on the shoulders of the world. A milky way of bees swarmed in my hair. My chambers filled, my arms indulged in pearls. And then the brilliance shriveled up and curled its shell against me. Later, midnight flared again. Again I heard the constellations whirl as the flame bombarded back. And soon we quarreled, and of our quarrel made a public square where chambers fill and small arms fire pearls like bullets. Our banners snapped and flew, unfurled in indignation in the mountain air. We charred the chilly shoulders of the world. I know how many ancient empires swirled with passionate industry, then fell to where all chambers fall, arms weeping out their pearls. Yet so we go, half fluent and half snarled. Abreast on constellating thoroughfares, we hold and bruise the shoulders of the world and fill our chambers, load our arms with pearls. And the last poem is a poem called Termessos, and it's about this remarkable city, ancient city in southern Turkey. It's a ruin. It's very, very high. There are more ruins in Turkey, Roman and Greek ruins in Turkey than there are in Rome and Greece put together. And most of them are unreconstructed, unlike the Forum, which has been sort of put together. Ephesus has been sort of put together, but Termessos is one that has not been. The boulders lay where they fell when the earthquakes toppled them off. The city, it was a city before the years of Christ. It was so high that Alexander the Great, in his march across Asia Minor, decided to skip it. He thought it was just too hard to get up there, and so he left it alone. And when we went, when you go to visit, you have to drive up a twisty road, switchbacks for 45 minutes in an automobile, and then you get to a path, and you have to walk up a steep 35 more minutes. And up there, you'll find these sarcophagi made of these enormous blocks of stone that is not native to the area. So somehow, way before, you can imagine any kind of technology, they managed to get these huge loads up there. Nobody knows how. It's a total mystery. But it's an enchanting place, and this is my paean to it. Termessos. From ashlar blocks cool to the hand, from the passionately accurate spaces between them, from cisterns brimming with desiccated comment, from the herd but invisible snake in the brush, rise the word walls of a ruined city. Wait, they seem to be saying, wait. They have waited through mountainous declensions of time, through bronze panels of sunlight that transfigure the fall, and lisping snows and the engorgements of spring. Wait, they say, in the dialect of stones that converses with surge and the moving earth. There is work to be done. There are cores to mine. There is a future here of geometrical purity if you just have the time to analyze the lines and to scrape and examine the speech-pocked friezes. Wait, they repeat, and one navigates a cleft with the feet and the heart and the desire to believe in this stone-born imperative and its constellations of lichen that testify there is no last diminishing, there is only the organic work of translation. Thank you all.